Hiroo Onoda, Unified ideograph, unified ideographs, unified ideograph, unified ideograph, unified ideographs, Onoda Hiroo, the 19th of March 1922, the 16th of January 2014, was an Imperial Japanese Army intelligence officer who fought in World War II and was a Japanese holdout who did not surrender at the war's end in August 1945. After the war ended, Onoda spent 29 years hiding out in the Philippines until his former commander traveled from Japan to formally relieve him from duty by order of Emperor Showa in 1974. He held the rank of second lieutenant in the Imperial Japanese Army. He was the penultimate Japanese soldier to surrender, with Teruo Nakamura surrendering later in 1974. Early life. Onoda was born on the 19th of March 1922, in Kamegawa Village, Keizo District, Wakayama Prefecture, Japan. When he was 17 years old, he went to work for the Tajima Trading Company in Wuhan, China. When he was 18, he was enlisted in the Imperial Japanese Army Infantry. Military service. Onoda trained as an intelligence officer in the commando class Futamata, Unified ideographic, Unified ideograph, Unified ideograph, Unified ideograph, FUTAMATABUNK of the Nakano School. On the 26th of December 1944, he was sent to Lubang Island in the Philippines. He was ordered to do all he could to hamper enemy attacks on the island, including destroying the airstrip and the pier at the harbor. Onoda's orders also stated that under no circumstances was he to surrender or take his own life. When he landed on the island, Onoda joined forces with a group of Japanese soldiers who had been sent there previously. The officers in the group outranked Onoda and prevented him from carrying out his assignment, which made it easier for the United States and Philippine Commonwealth forces to take the island when they landed on the 28th of February 1945. Within a short time of the landing, all but Onoda and 3 other soldiers had either died or surrendered. Onoda, who had been promoted to lieutenant, ordered the men to take to the hills. Time in hiding. Onoda continued his campaign as a Japanese holdout, initially living in the mountains of Lubang Island in the Philippines, with 3 fellow soldiers, Private Yuichi Agetsu, Corporal Shoichi Shimada and Private First Class Kinshishi Kozuka. During his stay, Onoda and his companions carried out guerrilla activities and engaged in several shootouts with the local police. The first time they saw a leaflet announcing that Japan had surrendered was in October 1945. Another cell had killed a cow and found a leaflet left behind by islanders which read, "The war ended on the 15th of August. Come down from the mountains." However, they distrusted the leaflet. They concluded that it was Allied propaganda and also believed that they would not have been fired on if the war had indeed been over. Toward the end of 1945, leaflets were dropped by air with a surrender order printed on them from General Tomoyuki Yamashita of the 14th Area Army. In hiding for over 6 months, this leaflet was the only evidence they had that the war was over. Onoda's group studied the leaflet closely to determine whether it was genuine, and decided it was not. One of the 4 soldiers, Yuichi Agetsu, walked away from the others in September 1949 and surrendered to Philippine forces in 1950, after 6 months on his own. This seemed like a security problem to the others and they became even more cautious. In 1952, letters and family pictures were dropped from an aircraft urging them to surrender, but the 3 soldiers concluded that this was a trick. Shimada was shot in the leg during a shootout with local fishermen in June 1953, after which Onoda nursed him back to health. On the 7th of May 1954, Shimada was killed by a shot fired by a search party looking for the men. A few years later, Kozuka was killed by 2 shots fired by local police on the 19th of October 1972, when he and Onoda, as part of their guerrilla activities, were burning rice that had been collected by farmers. Onoda was now alone. On the 20th of February 1974, Onoda met a Japanese man, Norio Suzuki, who was traveling around the world, looking for Lieutenant Onoda, a panda, and the abominable snowman, in that order. Suzuki found Onoda after 4 days of searching. Onoda described this moment in a 2010 interview. This hippie boy Suzuki came to the island to listen to the feelings of a Japanese soldier. Suzuki asked me why I would not come out. Onoda and Suzuki became friends, but Onoda still refused to surrender, saying that he was waiting for orders from a superior officer. Suzuki returned to Japan with photographs of himself and Onoda as proof of their encounter, and the Japanese government located Onoda's commanding officer, Major Yoshimi Taniguchi, who had long surrendered and since become a bookseller. Taniguchi went to Lubang Island, and on the 9th of March 1974, he finally met with Onoda and fulfilled a promise he had made back in 1944. "Whatever happens, we'll come back for you." Taniguchi then issued Onoda the following orders. Onoda was thus properly relieved of duty, and he surrendered. He turned over his sword, a functioning Arizaka Type 99 rifle, 500 rounds of ammunition and several hand grenades, as well as the dagger his mother had given him in 1944 to kill himself with if he was captured. Only Private Teruo Nakamura, arrested on the 18th of December 1974 in Indonesia, held out longer. Although he had killed people and engaged in shootouts with the local police in the Philippines, the circumstances, namely, that he believed that the war was still ongoing, were taken into consideration, where Onoda received a pardon from President Ferdinand Marcos. Later life Onoda was so popular following his return to Japan that some people urged him to run for the Diet, Japan's bicameral legislature. He also released an autobiography, No Surrender, My 30-Year War, shortly after his return, detailing his life as a guerrilla fighter in a war that was long over. A Philippine documentary interviewed people who lived on Lubang Island during Onoda's stay, revealing that Onoda had killed several people, which he had not mentioned in his autobiography. The news media reported this and had other misgivings, but at the same time welcomed his return home. The Japanese government offered him a large sum of money in back pay, which he refused. When money was pressed on him by well-wishers, he donated it to Yasukuni Shrine. Onoda was reportedly unhappy with being the subject of so much attention and was troubled by what he saw as the withering of traditional Japanese values. In April 1975, he followed the example of his elder brother Tadao and left Japan for Brazil, where he raised cattle. He married in 1976 and assumed a leading role in colonial Jamaica colony, the Japanese community in Terrinos, Mato Grosso do Sul, Brazil. Onoda also allowed the Brazilian Air Force to conduct trainings in the land that he owned. After reading about a Japanese teenager who had murdered his parents in 1980, Onoda returned to Japan in 1984 and established the Onoda Shizenjuku, Onoda Nature School educational camp for young people, held at various locations in Japan. Onoda revisited Lubang Island in 1996, donating $10,000 to the local school there. His wife, Makai Onoda, became the head of the Conservative Japan Women's Association in 2006. For many years, he spent 3 months of the year in Brazil. Onoda was awarded the Merit Medal of Santos Dumont by the Brazilian Air Force on the 6th of December 2004. On the 21st of February 2010, the Legislative Assembly of Mato Grosso do Sul awarded him the title of Cidadão, citizen. Death. Onoda died of heart failure on the 16th of January 2014, at St. Luke's International Hospital in Tokyo, due to complications from pneumonia. Japanese Chief Cabinet Secretary Yoshihide Suga commented on his death, "I still vividly remember that I was reassured of the end of the war when Mr. Onoda returned to Japan and also praised his will to survive." Works. Books. Hiragana letter wa, hiragana letter ga, katakana letter ru, katakana letter ba, katakana letter n, unified ideograph. Hiroo Onoda letter number 30, Unified Ideograph, Unified Ideograph, Unified Ideograph, 30 Years War on the Island of Lubang, Tokyo, Unified Ideograph, Unified Ideographic, Unified Ideograph, Tokyo Kodansha, 1974, OCLC 976947108. 248 pages. No Surrender, My 30-Year War. Translated by Charles S. Terry. New York, Dell Publishing, 1974. ISBN 9781557506634, OCLC 6547712. 251 pages. Interviews. Hiroo Onoda describes his private 30 years of war against the United States. Broadcast on The Mike Douglas Show, February 14, 1975. OCLC 271910000. See also: List of Japanese holdouts. List of solved missing persons cases. Shoichi Yokoi discovered on the island of Guam, 1972. Survival skills. Teruo Nakamura discovered December 1974, Morotai Island, Indonesia. Footnotes. Works cited: Hiroo Onoda, 1999. No Surrender, My 30-Year War. Translated by Terry, Charles S. New York, Dell. ISBN 9781557506634. Further reading: Robert D. McFadden, Hiroo Onoda, soldier who hid in jungle for decades, dies at 91, New York Times, the 17th of January 2014. External links: Kawaguchi, Judith, January 2007, Words to Live By, Japan Times. Interview. 30 Years in the Jungle. Could You Do It? Biography, Primitive Ways, also with Shoichi Yokoi. Bellows, Alan, The Soldier Who Wouldn't Quit. Damn interesting. Onoda Shizenjuku, in Japanese. Article and 5:57-minute video of a 2010 news broadcast show an interview with 88-year-old Onoda, his wife, color footage of when he left the jungle in 1974, etc. abc.net.au. Taylor, Alan. Image number 45, last at bottom. Photo of Onoda wearing his sword, on his last day before being relieved, with narrative caption, World War II, After the War, a retrospective in 20 parts. The Atlantic, the 30th of October 2011. The war is over, please come out. Japanese soldier surrenders 29 years after the end of World War II. History, 1900s. About Hiroo Onoda obituary. The Daily Telegraph.